So yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining the class. This is going to be kind of like a brief overview or kind of like an introduction into apologetics. And this is something that I've been really into over the past couple of years. And I thought it was really interesting because I haven't really heard very many people in church talk about it. And yeah, I just wanted to, right here I got Kai. Kai was, I was telling, he was looking at me like studying some stuff earlier and we were talking about it and he was like, oh, I want to join the class. I want to learn more. So that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be cool. He's going to be joining us too. But yeah, if you have anybody else that wants to come in and hear in what we're going to be talking about, I want this, I don't want this to be kind of like a, like a, like a teaching sort of thing, because I wanted to be more of like a discussion type. I'll go over certain subjects throughout the whole course. I have 7 classes that I want to get into, or 7 topics that I want to get into. And I want everybody to kind of like participate and be able to kind of give their own opinions. And I do look up to everybody inside the church because I feel like I'm still like a baby inside of the church. And I've never been a part of a church where, you know, most of the people inside of the church, about 90%, are in or have been in Bible college. And I'm over here still barely starting out. So I want to kind of get everybody's input on things too. But I think I can bring something to the table with my background. And, you know, getting into it, I just want to kind of, or yeah, going through these things or through these classes, I want to give everybody a kind of like a bit of where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this class. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my testimony. You know, I was born and raised in church. Have always been a part of the Apostolic Assembly. I think I'm like what, a 3rd, 4th generation apostolic. So I mean, our whole family was brought up in church. Yeah, was baptized, received the Holy Ghost at a young age. And after my wife and I had gotten married, you know, we kind of drifted away from the church, and we were no longer, I wouldn't consider us part of the church. We kind of moved from members to visitors for about 7 years. Throughout that time, I had, you know, there was a bunch of different stuff that happened throughout that time. And by the end of it, when I finally had graduated and I got a job and I moved over here to the Bay Area, I kind of started seeing things line up in my life. Kind of saw God taking control of my life, and I knew it was because of Him. I knew it wasn't because of me. So when I saw that happen, I kind of thought to myself, you know, I owe it to God for me to search for Him again. And when I did, I started listening to a bunch of preachings, and, you know, I felt God like starting to talk to me and started to really move in my life. But also at the same time, when I was hearing a lot of these people talk, I kind of realized I don't know anything about the Bible. And so I wanted to do one thing that I had never done before in my life, which was I wanted to go through the Bible from front to back, starting from Genesis and going all the way through Revelation. And I did that in about a year's time. And when I reached the halfway point, I got so frustrated. I came to a point where I was like, you know, I thought reading the Bible would give me more clarity, would give me more answers. But in reading the Bible, especially with the Old Testament, I was left with more answers or more questions than answers. So I began to question a lot of things to where I almost lost my faith at one point. My brother was a big part in helping me regain that faith and reading a lot of books that helped me a lot. And I'll share some of those books that I've read. And you know, it was I think it was a point where I was coming. I looked at the Bible face value. I didn't search deeper, and I think that's what prompted me to get more into apologetics, because as I started getting into the New Testament, I found something totally different, where I started seeing things where I've never heard before. I started, picturing Jesus in a different way that I've never pictured before, pictured the disciples in a different way I've never pictured before. So I started, researching more about it, and that's where I found apologetics. When I found apologetics, that opened a whole new door to everything that I was searching for. And that's where I'm going to be getting into it. And I think that I found God in more real of a way than I never thought that I would have found God. And I think this all is also largely to my background, which is I have my degree as an electronic engineer. So as an engineer, we look at things differently than most people. Well, the way that we look at things, we put a lot of our, I wouldn't say faith, but we put a lot of what we do into science. And we use science to explain much of the world that's around us. And we use that getting into physics, getting into chemistry, getting into biology, getting into mathematics. I mean, that's all that we use is just nothing but math. And we have to know how to use these theories and hypothesis and experimentation to do all these testing and to prove what we're doing. And we have to prove them in different ways. So using apologetics allowed me to do that with the Bible. And yeah, we can start getting into it. I hope that you guys find this interesting. I'd like to get all of your guys' input and into what we'd be talking about. And this whole first part of the class, we're going to be getting into does God exist? These were points. I have structured these classes in ways that help me into where I was going with my faith. When I started studying apologetics, I broke up topics to go over and proving how real, or if we have good reason to believe what we believe in. So in order of topics, it's going to go, does God exist? Second will be how reliable the Bible is, and we'll be going over that. Third would be was Jesus real or not? I mean, so we're going to go over the historicity of Jesus and also his death. Fourth, we're going to be going over the resurrection. And then the next three is when over the past, I want to say like 6 months, I've been really involved in. And it's been looking at different other religions. And for me, I mean, if you guys are okay with going into that, I think it's really important to get into that. And for me, it helped me out a lot, and learning what other people believe in, and learning scriptures to help us evangelize to them. Because I think it's important in knowing what's different between us and them. Because before I didn't know anything. I didn't know the difference between about what we believe in and what they believe in. So we'll be going over the three major religions that I think are out there, which is going to be Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, and Islam. So yeah, we'll get started with the first part, and this is going to be does God exist? I'm going to share my screen, and I have a slideshow that I will be doing. All right, let me know if you guys see that. Good. All right.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right. I'm just going to put this a little bit bigger. There's so much stuff to go over. I was even still writing stuff today. So bear with me. I have a bunch of notes that I'm going to be reading over. So yeah. So we're going to be going over right here. Does God exist? All right. So first thing we're going to go over is what is apologetics. And when people hear apologetics, they think that it's just a form of apology. But on the contrary, it's just the opposite. So apologetics is a formal argumentation in defense of something such as a position or system. As a Christian apologetic, it is not an apology for something, but it's the opposite. We are to use it in the sense that we are to give a defense of our Christian faith. We are to answer people's questions about the truth of the gospel. We try to demonstrate that the claims of Jesus are true and make sense intellectually, and offer the best picture of our world of reality. And one big key verse is 1 Peter 3:15, and it says, "But in your hearts reverence Jesus Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to make a defense." And in Greek, the word defense is apologia. "To anyone who calls you to account for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and reverence." And this is where we get the word apologetic from, is that Greek word apologia. So first, we're going to talk about the beginning. So in the beginning, we know that the beginning of the universe can be explained. A lot of this is going to be going into a lot of scientific background. So I want you guys to stop me if I'm going too fast, or if you don't understand anything or anything like that. Please feel free to stop me, ask questions, whatever. But yeah, just as a reminder, this whole first class is probably going to be the most that we'll go into this much scientifically. All the rest is going to be a bunch of history and stuff like that, which would be cool. So yeah, in the beginning, we know that the beginning of the universe, we now know it as Einstein's theory of general relativity, and that there was a beginning of time, space, and matter. And by the first law of thermodynamics, it indicates that the matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. And that's the original cause of existence that has to be outside of time and space dimensions. And general relativity is one of the most accurate theories ever proposed. It proposes answers to physical situations like planetary dynamics, the birth and death of stars, black holes, and the development of the universe. And a lot of this we can explain with just the first verse in the Bible, and that's with Genesis 1:1. So we can prove God exists with just Genesis 1:1, as it says in the beginning, we can use that as time. God created the heavens, and the heavens would be space, and the earth, which is classified as matter. So we know that there had to be something or someone that created the whole universe that had to exist outside of time, space, and matter, and that would be God. So we know that if things in existence were not randomly formed in particular life, they must have been created by an intelligent designer. Through observation alone, we can marvel at the intricacy of design that is apparent of all life. And then we can get into the vastness of space. So the vastness of space, this is what I was going over with Kai, and I was blowing his mind. So the vastness of space here is going to be our Milky Way, and this is where we are. This little piece of nothing that's right there, that's where we are. So to give you a visualization, the Milky Way galaxy, if the Milky Way galaxy, which is what you see here, was shrunken down to the size of the United States, our solar system would be the size of a quarter. And that's how big our Milky Way is. From us to the nearest star is about 30 trillion miles away. One of the fastest known objects that we've created is the International Space Station. And the International Space Station orbits Earth at 17,500 miles per hour, or it would be roughly calculated about 5 miles per second. And from us to the nearest star, which is 30 trillion miles away, it will take us about 201,450 years to get to there. Or if we were traveling at light speed, which is 186,000 miles per second, it would take us a little bit over 5 light years just to get to our nearest star. That's how big our universe would be. And there are about 400 billion stars in our Milky Way. Just in this picture alone, in the Milky Way system, there's about 400 billion stars that are there. In our entire universe, there's an estimated between 100 to 200 billion galaxies in our universe. And there's an estimated between 3 sextillion stars in the universe, and that is a 3 with 21 zeros after it. And that's how many stars are in the entire universe. I have on the next slide, there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand. In this picture, you'll see, this is a picture taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. And in this picture alone, there are 250 galaxies in that picture. In that picture, each galaxy has hundreds of billions of stars in those galaxies. And that, you wouldn't even be able to see this picture with your naked eye up in the, if you were to look at the sky. So we can get into one of the arguments, and these are a couple of the arguments that I found the most interesting to me. And I'm not going to go into a lot of intricate detail. It will take me a long time to get through them, but we're going to just kind of go over an overview of them. So this is going to be the fine-tuning argument. The fine-tuning argument: the physics and cosmology of the universe is exquisitely organized within a small range to allow the emergence and sustenance of life. And with this, we can divide the fine-tuning argument into 3 layers, which is the foundational layer, the regional layer, and locational layer. So the foundational layer will have to do with atoms and elements. So each of these would be a fine-tuning argument. You have the fine-tuning of the strong force that binds the nucleus to the atom. You have the fine-tuning of the weak force that governs radioactive decay. You also have the fine-tuning of gravitational force that binds our solar system, galaxy, and universe. We have the fine-tuning of the electromagnetic force that binds the atom. And we also have the fine-tuning of secondary elements like carbon that require an incredible fine-tuning of these forces. So each of these fine-tuning forces, if any little thing were out of place, there would be no life in our universe. The next layer would be our regional layer, which would be our galaxy and our solar system. In our galaxy, it must have the right size, the right mass, the right shape, and the right location in the universe. The star system must be arranged just right, with a certain shape, a number of planets, and a certain location in the spiral arm of the galaxy. Even the spiral arm must be fine-tuned for all this to come together. So you'll see the bottom picture, you'll see the spiral arms that are right there. We have to exist in our solar system, has to be in the most perfect spot in that spiral arm for us to even exist, for even life to emerge. And if we were a little bit farther out, we wouldn't exist. If we were farther in, we wouldn't exist. So the next layer would also be the locational layer. Locational layer would be it would be like the top picture up above, where you see our solar system with the planets in orbit, and which would include our Earth. So the locational layer has to be just right. It has to have the just right relationship to the sun, which would be the just right distance and the correct tilt. So if we were anywhere closer or farther away from the sun, there wouldn't be life. If the tilt of our Earth were past, I think it's 23 degrees. If we're a degree off, a degree less, or a degree more, I mean, there wouldn't be any life. We also have to have just the right atmospheric condition, the just right gravitational pull and gas proportions on Earth. If any of it were out of place, there wouldn't be any life. We also have to have just the right terrestrial crust on Earth, which is just the right crust thickness and mineral composition. And we also have to have just the right moon. So the moon has to be at the right distance. The moon has to be at a just right size, and it has to be at a just right rotation around the Earth. If the moon were any bigger, smaller, they went around the Earth faster, any little thing that were off, it would compromise life on Earth. So the foundational layer, the regional layer, and the locational layer must all be perfect for life to exist on Earth. So we can go over a couple of examples, and this is going to get a bit nerdy here. Don't worry if you don't really understand it. But first, we have gravity. So the gravity force is determined by our gravitational constant G, and is given by this equation of F equals. So if G had varied in one part in 10 to the 60th, and that is a 10 with 60 zeros after it, none of us would exist. The gravitational constant was out of tune by one small increment. The universe would either have expanded too rapidly so that no stars could form and life would not exist, or the universe could have collapsed back in on itself, leaving no stars, no planets, and no life. The second example I give is the expansion rate of the universe. The expansion rate of the universe is given by that equation. And the cosmological constant, which was given by Einstein, is the cosmological constant would be that upside down V that you see right in the corner at the end of that equation. And if that were to change in one part to 10 to the 120th, that is a 10 with 120s right after it, that would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In both cases, the universe would be life prohibiting. So there would be no life if that were off by just that small amount. The third example that I give is the mass and energy of the early universe. The mass and energy of the early universe is containing of neutrinos, photons, atoms, and dark matter. If the early universe were not evenly distributed to a precision of one part in 10 to the 10th to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to any life of any kind. And that is a 10 with, I don't even know how many zeros. That's an unbelievable number that you couldn't even fathom how many zeros would be after that. That is an extreme precision that is needed for life to exist in our universe. So next we can go to our observable universe. Our observable universe, how do we know any of this stuff? Well, it just so happens that we live in the most perfect time right now to observe any of this stuff, to even measure any of this stuff. And all these things are measured to an extreme precision. In the observable universe, the Earth resides in the perfect light habitable location within our dark universe. It is only because we live in the darkest possible location that we can see the darkness and measure the darkness's quantity and its location. The Earth's dark location is far from the galactic bulge, which is that center. So that center, if we were to live too close to it, we wouldn't be able to see any of our observable universe. It would be too bright. And we're also far from the spiral arms, which we cross once every 1 billion years. And we are also far from many bright gaseous nebulae. So those you can tell are from, if you were to a really dark place, like out in the woods, and you were to look up at the sky, you'd see really bright gases like going up in the sky. If we were any closer to that, it would be so bright you wouldn't be able to see all the galaxies that we'd be able to measure. Also, our Milky Way galaxy is far from bright galaxies. In our local galaxy group, there are other galaxies that are small and far away from us. So it helps that in our galaxy group that none of the bigger galaxies are closer to us. So we were able to observe what we can. So we live in the best time to observe the universe. If we were created earlier, creation lacks time to reach us. So if we were created later, dark energy expands the universe at more than light's velocity. We are at a stage where we can observe 100% of cosmic history since the beginning of the cosmic creation event. This is where we get our most rigorous evidence that there must be a creator beyond space, time, and matter and energy that brought this universe into existence. And one of the verses that I like is Psalms 19:1 and 2. And it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. And to me, this has been one of the most compelling arguments that I found in my study is studying about the cosmic history. And I have a few books that I would recommend to you guys. And they're books that I'm still actually reading right now. So I have, this one is The Creator and the Cosmos by Dr. Hugh Ross. And this is, going over the universe, about how the universe is perfectly created for us. In that book, it has over 300 proofs of how perfectly our universe had to have gone to, have life in our universe. The other one is also by Dr. Hugh Ross. It's called Improbable Planet. Improbable Planet kind of goes over our own locational layer or regional layer, which is just our planet alone. And there's a bunch of proofs of how perfectly our planet is in our solar system, where life can exist. So let's we can go into the next one, which is the complexity of life argument. You okay? So the complexity of life. So we've already looked at the complexity of the universe. And we don't have to look out into the universe to see how complex it is. We can look just in ourselves to see how complex life was to prove God's existence. So right here I have I'm just gonna go over a bunch of material that I have just for these certain different pictures that I have presented. So right here we have cells. And cells can vary from different sizes of the smallest bacteria, which would be at 1/50,000th of an inch across, which would be in this picture that you would see. Or it would be the largest cell would be like the yolk of an ostrich egg. To put into perspective, an average cell can fit 1,000 cells within the period of a sentence. 25,000 bacteria would be able to fit into that same space, which is that period of a sentence. All cells, they breathe, eat, get rid of waste, grow, reproduce, and eventually die. One cell in the human body contains the equivalent information of 8 billion letters, 500 million words, or 8,000 books. There are as many as 100 trillion cells in the human body. Each cell contains about 1 trillion atoms. The human body contains 10 to the 28 atoms. That is a 10 with 28 zeros after it. Our body contains 10 to the 28th atoms, and that is more than all the stars that are in the universe. And that is just in your own body. So right here we have the DNA strand. One DNA strand, if you were to uncoil a DNA strand, it would reach 9 feet in length. If you were to get all the DNA strands of every cell in the human body, and if you were to uncoil them end to end, it would go to the sun and back about 70 times. That's how much information that we have in our body. And the DNA is a master molecule that provides the unique controlling information for each person. We also have RNA. RNA is essentially a DNA copy that allows protein to develop. Proteins, which are over 100,000 plus types, are amino acid chains made according to DNA instructions depending upon the needs of our body. So what does all this microdesign tell us in a single DNA molecule result in? The average human adult's body every second of every day is organizing about 150 quintillion amino acids into carefully constructed chains. And what do these chains of proteins do? They carry out a vast array of bodily functions, which the average person never thinks about. And a lot of these functions, let's skip a slide. A lot of these functions I'll show in this next part. These are all just things that happen throughout your body, which proves the complexity of what's going on in your body. So in a lifetime, your heart beats 2.5 billion times. In a lifetime, it produces 60 million gallons of blood. There are about 60,000 miles of blood vessels in your body, which is equivalent to 2.5 times around the earth. The number of red blood cells in your body laid end to end will circle the earth 4 times. You breathe about 23,000 times in a day. Your eye is so intricately complex that there's only one chance in 10 to the 78 that any 2 humans would have the same characteristics. In your retina in the eye, there are 120 million rods and 7 million cones. The ear has a million moving parts in it. The ear has over 100,000 motion detecting hair cells that allowed us to maintain balance and motion. Your nose can determine 10,000 different types of smells. Your body has 450 touch cells per square inch. There is estimated to be 100 billion neurons in the brain. Each neuron is estimated to have 10,000 branching fibers connecting it with other neurons. The brain has the capacity to store the amount of information containing 25 million books. And the brain makes about 1,000 trillion computations per second. And all of that and much, much more just from one tiny DNA molecule that somehow knew exactly how to build and what to do for a particular person. The idea that the body's vast microbiological complexity could have evolved from a single bacterium exceeds belief. The more that we learn about biology, from the complexity of cellular structure to the vast complexity of our own bodies, the more obvious it is that all living things were designed. And the origin of life can determine that evolution is beyond reason and that the only alternative is intelligent life in itself. And I included a quote. He's from a famous atheist. His name is Anthony Flew. And Anthony Flew used to be a famous atheist. But when he examined the complexity of DNA, he soon became a theist. And here's a quote that I had pulled from Anthony Flew that says, now I now believe that there is a God. I now think that it does point to a creative intelligence almost entirely because of the DNA investigations. What I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life. That intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinary diverse elements to work together. So, I mean, that's the end that I kind of want to go over with. I didn't want to overload anybody on anything else that we had, but I mean, those were just two of the proofs that I have, and I haven't even gone over all these other proofs, and all these other proofs we can get into them if you guys want. These are more proofs that you can even present to other people. We have like the moral law. The moral law is, if some things are morally objectively right and wrong, then there must be a God. So at what point does moral objective values arise? So that's something that we would be able to present to atheists. I believe that atheists, they borrow from our moral law to be able to make a case for theirs. Because with the atheists, all it is just biology. All it is just survival of the fittest. So, I mean, if it was just Dawkins' survival of the fittest, I mean, there is no morality. There is no such thing as morality. What would make it morally? What would make it morally? How would you say it? Like morally impossible? Not morally impossible, but what would make it objectively look wrong if rape was wrong, or if child molestation was wrong? I mean, they would have to borrow from our moral law, which is God's moral law. That would be true. So we also have like a case for free will. Humans are free agents in a cause and effect world. So that would kind of bring rise to the same thing with we live in a cause and effect world. How do we have free will? The only way that we were to have free will is because God gave us the free will to do it. If atheists were to believe that they have to believe in materialism or in a naturalistic materialism, which is just matter and motion. We are just products of our own chemistry, which is just chemistry happening. We don't have any free will about what we do. Again, free will can go straight into the moral law. Then we also have consciousness. Non-material consciousness emerged from unconscious matter. How did consciousness come to existence? There is no explaining in evolution how consciousness came into existence. Then we also have the evidence of evil. The persistence of and presence of evil and injustice. So a lot of atheists will bring up, there is no God because there's so much evil in the world. But to even present a case for evil, there must be a certain standard for good. And, just like in the Bible, how Jesus said, even Jesus said himself, there is none good but God. So God is our standard of good. So there has to be a standard of good to even present evil, to be even bring up a case for evil. So, that would be the end of my presentation. I would like to get your guys' feedback.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
That was a lot to go over. I went through really fast.
What is your thought? Because every time, it comes up with if God exists, things like that. A lot of people, obviously as believers, we would say that, we go and we research the Bible, and kind of like you read Genesis 1:1, right? In the beginning, God created. But also I've heard a lot of people that they just go to like the Big Bang Theory. What's your thought on that?
By going straight to the Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
Well, I think the Big Bang Theory is proved in Genesis 1:1. So the Big Bang Theory is proven by general relativity that Einstein brought up. So I know a lot of people back in the day would say, if you believe in the Big Bang Theory, then you're going out. You're going out to the world, or you're going to become an atheist or something. But the Big Bang Theory is proved by general relativity, and we use a lot of those experiments to prove it. I actually had a bunch of notes, and that was something that I was kind of iffy about going over, because it also depends on the person that I'm talking to. I know a lot of people, they will shy away from the Big Bang. I don't, because I believe that the Big Bang can be used to prove God's existence. Just as it says in the beginning, when God created, that was it. That was the Big Bang. So we know who created the Big Bang. It was God. God was the person that banged it to existence. We can also look into the expansion rate. The expansion rate of the universe, which I talked about earlier, is also proven by the what's called the cosmic background radiation. And that I actually have a picture that I can show you guys. So I'm going to go to share screen. All right, and you guys can see that. That's a picture that I have. That's going to be the Big Bang expansion. So what you guys see right here at this very end is a cosmic background radiation, and that was measured in 1992 by the COBE Explorer, and that is a COBE Explorer, and that was a satellite that they launched out into the Earth's orbit, and they were able to measure that cosmic expansion. And the cosmic expansion was measured since I have it right here. It was measured since the let me see. I believe it was 1989. Yep. Yeah, it was measured in 1989, and then we proved it in 1992. Our scientists proved it in 1992, and this maps the afterglow of the expansion rate of the universe. So the afterglow, you can think of it as like an oven. So if you have an oven that's on and you open the oven, you'll have all that heat that comes towards you. If that heat were to come towards you and just keep traveling and traveling and traveling, that would be the same thing. That's what you're looking at here, is all that heat. So that was measured in 1992, and a lot of I know I've read a lot of quotes. I didn't put a quote in here, but I know I've read a lot of quotes that say that that's kind of like looking at the face of God, or looking at the hand of God, or looking at the beginning of time of its creation. So with this, we can prove that the Big Bang was real. When the Big Bang happened, it also had to start from nothing. There couldn't have been anything, what
Right.
you kind of go back to that same exact point. Since the Big Bang happened, you can also compress it to one little point, which was the singularity. When the singularity happened, it was just a point in time that exploded into the Big Bang. And what was before the singularity? There was nothing. People like Lawrence Krauss, who's a famous atheist, he says, well, we have a different meaning of nothing. When you get down to nothing, you get into quantum elements, quantum physics, quantum mechanics. But even that, you can't even prove. That's really hard to prove. And that's something that I've read into, and it's even hard for me to understand. But when you get into quantum particles and all that stuff, to me, that is still something. You still need something or someone to create that something.
Mm.
So that's how we prove that God is outside of that time, space, matter, energy. He had to exist beyond that, because there had to be something or someone that existed beyond that to create it. Let me stop sharing this one. So a really good one that you guys can look up. It's a really funny a viral video that you can see on YouTube. Look up Lawrence Krauss and Stephen Colbert. So Lawrence Krauss was interviewed by Stephen Colbert on the Colbert Report, and Lawrence Krauss kind of presents his case for nothing out of the Big Bang, but Stephen Colbert just rips him apart, even though it was kind of like a comedy. It was like a comedy gag or a comedy skit, and oh man, it's just so funny that it's impossible to even think that there could be something out of nothing. I don't know. It's just you have to have God to create from nothing. It's even hard for atheists and scientists to prove that it has to happen otherwise. But yeah, anything you guys want to talk about or go over?
I want to let somebody else ask, because I don't want to be the only one.
Oh, go ahead. Tell me where you guys were confused. I know it was a lot to go over.
No, I think that's, what I'm taking away besides, just how intricate life is in general.
Yeah.
And how, God's hand is really over everything. But I think we sometimes get into the semantics of things, right? So when people say nothing, it actually means something.
Right.
And that's where the confusion comes into more grounded in God, right?
Yeah.
Where if you're not willing to dig into that nothingness, then you won't see what's actually there. And I think that that's the hard part sometimes as Christians, that we have to put in the work to see to uncover God really, because
right.
the easy route is, you take a look at the Big Bang Theory, and it's amazing regardless, right?
Yeah.
How it just comes, but it doesn't happen without God.
Right. It still doesn't happen without God. I mean, even if you believe that there was early universe, that say that you took the Bible extremely literally and say that the whole earth or universe was created in 6,000 years, I mean, you still need God to do it.
Right.
So, I mean, either position that you hold, I think you still need God. But I think that through science, we shouldn't be afraid of science.
No.
Science is actually, for us. I mean, we use a lot of science. Even the early forefathers of science were all Christian. And, that's something that a lot of people don't know. And I couldn't be able to name, right off the bat, like all these other people. But I know like Einstein was like Christian, people like Plato or Aristotle were Christian, or not just Christian, but they just believed in God. So I know that a lot of these people, they wanted to explore the universe in search for God. And I think that we have a lot of evidence to use science to our advantage. And this is something funny to talk about. Is like it's something I even wrote in my paper for my Bible college class, and it was actually talking about creation. And we had the option of talking about what we wanted to talk about. So we went over an overview of the Old Testament, and we could have went through a bunch of different topics or just picked one. And this was one that I just so happened to pick, was just creation. So I just wrote my paper just all on creation. And I used a lot of scientific evidence that we have, but at the same time, I used a lot of it to prove God's existence, which was kind of a bonus in the paper. So, I mean, it's just something I've been so, really into right now. I've been, it's been blowing my mind about all these things that I have been learning and seeing, and yeah, just seeing the whole hand of God on everything, is unbelievable. And one of the things that I think that led me to it was because I was so bothered earlier in my walk in my faith when I almost lost it. I was so bothered by a lot of people just saying just have faith, or just because just the Bible says. And to me, it was, I always took it, to, I know to other people it's not that big of a problem, but to me as an engineer, I need hard proof. Not even just scientific proof. I just need proof. Anything, any sort of proof. And to me, I always saw that as blind faith. And so this whole journey into apologetics has led me away from blind faith and has actually given me hard, concrete evidence that, dang, we do really have good reason to believe in what we believe in. We have a lot of evidence. We have a ton of evidence for what we believe in. Just in this one class that we have, which is just to prove that God exists. I hadn't even gone over any of those other points that we had gone over. That could go over maybe another hour if we wanted to, even longer. But I mean, if you guys are interested, maybe even like a later class, I mean, we can go over any of those other arguments that would seem interesting to you guys.
Hey, why do you think scientists or a lot of scientists don't believe though? If they like, do you think they go too deep, or like they just choose not to believe, not to see it, or what's your thought on them? Since
Yeah,
we are using kind of science to kind of like,
right. I think a lot of people, a lot of scientists just don't understand the Bible. I mean, even though, there's a lot of points in science that they still cannot prove, they'll go straight to the Bible to just say, you know what, so the Bible condones slavery, or there's, you know, there's just like a bunch of stuff that's wrong in the Bible, and why do we believe it? And I think it's just a misinterpretation of the Bible. I think it's a lot of scientists that kind of never really studied the Bible. One of the things that we won't go into in any of this and of any of these classes, which is atheism. And but one thing that I'll share is when I was looking into different religions, atheism was one that I had to look into. Just because I think going into all these religions, I had to know what was true and what was not. And when I looked into atheism, one of the first books read was a book that a lot of people told me to be extremely careful with, which was The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. And The God Delusion is regarded as kind of like the atheist Bible. And I've heard of many, many Christians that have read The God Delusion and have left the faith because of it. But when I read it, one of the first things that jumped out to me was like, oh my God, like this guy knows nothing about the Bible. When he generalized certain terms and kind of put us all into one big boat, he kind of put all of us evangelicals, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, Islam, or Muslim, he kind of put us all into one big camp. And I was like, you know what? We don't even all believe in the same thing. I was like, we all disagree with each other. I believe now that, all those other religions aren't true. But he kind of put us all in the same boat, and kind of he threw in some parts was like saying like, I think a certain part of the Bible says this. I'm not really sure, but I don't really have to look into it because it's stupid. And that's kind of just to like put everything in the condensed version. But it was kind of things like that, and I was like, man, like this guy knows nothing. I could tell that he's never even studied the Bible. He probably just opened the Bible, looked up a few scriptures, saw what was wrong with it, and just says, you know what, the heck with it. And I think that's what a lot of scientists have done with it. I tried looking into atheists that have really studied into the Bible, but even with them, I've seen them as agnostic and not atheists.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, like God always reminds Israel to like worship Him instead of other people. So a lot of these philosophers and biologists or these science people, what they do is that they worship the creation instead of the creator. So then that totally skews their judgment, and then that places their worship in the wrong person or being. So then obviously when they worship the wrong thing, everything else is going to like be,
Right. Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think I've heard of a lot of people say that, people that are atheists or scientists that are atheists, they don't want to become Christian because they're too into their sin. That's the thing that they worship. That's the thing that they're into. What if Christianity were true? Would it be that hard to let go of what they're doing? I mean, that's one question that you can ask atheists when you encounter them. If Christianity, say, for sake of debate, if Christianity were true and we knew with 100% without a doubt that God was real, that Jesus was real, that He resurrected from the grave, all of that was 100% true without a doubt, what would that do to their worldview? Would it destroy them? Would it cast them away from their friends? Would they be rejected by their friends? Would they be rejected by their family? I mean, some people just don't. They'd rather be complacent where they are because that's what's comfortable to them. And that's one thing that I will talk about when we get into other religions. And that's one thing that I've heard from even different Mormons. And, I've seen countless videos upon videos, and just to see how Mormons talk and how they respond to certain questions. And I remember watching one video where this guy was invited to this temple to speak. And he used to be an ex-Mormon, and he kind of said that he was coming back, but in reality, he kind of just ripped open a can of worms and just said, you know what, this is what's wrong with the religion, and these are all the things that I found out. And they kind of brought him away from the pulpit and said, you know what, you're done speaking to the congregation. And this lady came up to him and said to him, I was in that same boat where you are, but, think about the children. Think about the children and what's going to happen to them. And he was like, well, what do you mean think about the children? I mean, this is false. Like, why do you even believe it in the first place if you know it's false? And she was like, well, this is where I've grown up. This, if I leave, I don't have any family. I'll be excommunicated. I've heard of another person say they're only in the Mormon religion just because it secures that he has a job for the rest of his life. And it's like, to me, it's like, it just like blows my mind that a lot of these people I think that they know the truth. They're just suppressing the truth because that's where they want to be in life. That's what they're complacent with in their life. But yeah, I'd like to know your guys' thoughts about that. That's kind of just what I think.
This is a general kind of question, and it could be for another time too, or another topic. But I'd be curious about what, in your research or what you've come across, and what science or scientists say about the Holy Spirit, and how it works in modern day, you know, both at churches and just in general. I mean, I've seen miracles, and it by people's faith, and I've seen some things where that, I mean, that's supernatural. That's God.
Right.
There's no other explanation. Or people who are just completely sick coming out from the brink, and like, you know, how what they think about that type of stuff. And
Yeah.
I obviously will always know it's God, but I mean, I'm curious to know what they.
Yeah.
think about.
I mean, that also depends on the person too that you talk to. Bringing the supernatural up can be a touchy subject where they either believe it or don't believe it. You can bring up as many experiences as you want, and they will not believe it at all. I remember seeing this one debate, and this was with Mike Licona, Dr. Mike Licona, and Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty is a really famous atheist on YouTube. And Mike Licona, he is one of the top, I want to say the top 3 leading researchers in the resurrection of Jesus. And he's one that I'll mention when we get into the resurrection. And Mike Licona, before he even brought up anything on the resurrection of Jesus, a lot of what he brought up was with the supernatural. And he brought up all these cases that had to do with the supernatural, all these, you know, the scientists that looked into the supernatural and saying, you know, not even bringing up God, to even just bring up the unexplained. You know, he kind of asked Matt Dillahunty, like, what do you think about that? Like, how do you even explain any of this? And Matt Dillahunty was like, I don't, like, you know, I don't believe any of it. And it kind of goes to, you know, I guess talking to the person that you're talking to, because one of the questions that he asked him, he was like, all right, well, if you don't believe it, then what's the point in even talking to you about the resurrection? If anything that we say is not even going to do anything for you. To one question that I guess you can ask to atheists would also be, you know, what evidence would you how would I put this? What kind of evidence is like, you know, good evidence, I guess, to present to them, or what would they think is good evidence for the resurrection, or what do they think? What would they consider to even be evidence at all for the resurrection? And if they say nothing, then, you know, it goes deeper than that. It's their epistemology that they don't want to let go of. It's just what they believe in. It's just they don't want to believe in it at all. One of the things that Dr. Mike Licona had said in that debate was, he says, all right, well, say like if I were to have my head cut off in the middle of this debate, you see it rolling on the floor, and I'm dead. And then, you know, somebody brings my head, or I come and somebody brings up my head and then puts it on the top of my body, and then I come back to life or something like that. It was just some like insane like sort of thing. And he was saying, and you know, and then after that, I went outside, I even talked to everybody, and I had an account that everybody even saw me. And then I come up to you and I say, hey, Matt Dillahunty, like, you know, this happened where, you know, I was dead and then now I'm alive. You know, you saw my head cut off, and you looking at me now, you can even see the scar on my neck. You can even talk to all these people that saw it, all these other people that even verified that that I was dead and I came back to life. Would that be enough evidence? And Matt Dillahunty said pretty much no. He said that wouldn't even be enough evidence. He said there had to be at least some explanation that would happen in a naturalistic universe. And to me, I mean, that is complete, you know, ludicrous. I mean, that is insane that somebody would even think that's not even good enough evidence. You know, at that point, you think to yourself, then what is good enough evidence? I mean, there is no good enough evidence to even convince you. And it's because he doesn't want to be convinced at all. So, I mean, there are some people that are like that. I believe that there are a lot of scientists that are like that. They don't want it. They don't want it to be true, even though we do have a lot of good evidence.
This is it's been awesome for sure. But that's a lot of good info. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys sticking through it, listening to the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, the next one that we're going to go over is going to be the reliability of the Bible. And that we're going to be going over a lot more, archaeology, historical artifacts, and, like really, getting into the meat of, how can we prove that the Bible is even reliable at all? I think that's a really interesting topic. So, I mean, that was my next step in getting my faith, a lot more in depth. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have anything else that you guys want to go over or talk about, any other questions?
Hey, Andrew, I just wanted to say I appreciate this lesson, man, and could really tell that this is something you're really passionate about and you're really knowledgeable about. I really loved learning about the intricacies of the universe and of our body. It just helped me put things in perspective and just gave me a sense of like awe towards God and how good and amazing He is. And I don't know, it's just refreshing to learn about that.